Greetings to all. I'm Dr. Devina Krishna, and today I'm going to talk about translanguaging. The topic of my presentation is translanguaging within Indian academic zones, breaking linguistic barriers. So, this is how I have planned my talk. I'll be talking about translanguaging, types of translanguaging, boon, whether it's a boon or not, the challenges that we as teachers face while involving in translanguaging with conclusion. Now, this is an anonymous quote, and I've mentioned here that to have another language is to possess a second soul. Undoubtedly, we need to take care of our mother tongues, and it's important that we should not just limit our linguistic repertoire to just one language, but we should keep on adding more languages. Before I actually talk about what translanguaging is, let me introduce you about the concept of bilingualism and multilingualism, because these are some things associated with this whole idea of translanguaging. So, the ability to speak in more than one language is a valuable asset. We know that language is important for our existence, it is a marker of our identity, and it is important to speak as many languages. Now, as I come from India, it's a multilingual nation, this diversity of cultures, there are so many languages there. So, automatically, or let's say naturally, there are chances that bilingualism or multilingualism prevails there. So, what is bilingualism? Bilingualism allows us to gain proficiency in speaking more than one language. So, it is actually, you can say, a linguistic situation where a person is using more than one language. And it is actually a person uses two languages, let's say. So it's a common human condition, and it makes it possible for an individual to function at some level in more than one language. And I'm very much in favor of using as many languages. So whether it's a classroom scenario, or you are just having an informal chat with your friend, it's good to switch between languages. It's good to mix languages, because these are the normal linguistic situations, and we should not run away from those situations. This whole concept of bilingualism helps to stay aligned with our cultural identity. So we know that once we switch from one language to another language, so we are giving life to different languages, because we as human beings are responsible for making any kind of linguistic action. So if we speak more than one language, then we are giving life to languages. This is what I believe. So, in a way, we are preserving our cultural identity as well. Now, this brings value to our social interactions. So, it actually adds, value to our social interactions. And that's quite true, because we are not, limiting ourselves to one language. Otherwise, if we just stick to one language, so there can be a condition of monolingualism. So I think it's good to to use as many languages. And of course, there are so many benefits associated with it, with that. There is academic advantage. It leads to the boosting of one's self-confidence and increased self-esteem. So it's good to add as many languages to your verbal repertoire. Then it helps students effectively connect with people of different cultures and backgrounds. So this is a very positive scenario. This is a very positive situation when we talk about bilingualism. So it's a condition where we speak more than one language. So it is use of two languages. You simultaneously use two languages. Now, as far as the bilingual education is concerned, so teaching of academic content in two languages. So, what happens? There's a native language, there's a mother tongue, there's a home language, and there is another tongue that's called the second language. The students study school subjects through an additional language, a few others through their first language or two languages. It provides an easy way of learning and primary instruction through the regional language and English. So it's of it's of great importance to students also, because not only they are limiting themselves to one language, but they are learning two languages. So if there's a bilingual situation in a classroom, so it's of added advantage. There are some students who have, they can simply understand in their mother tongue. So it's good that sometimes the teachers, they switch to other language, especially their mother tongue. So it becomes an added advantage to the students. So we should take that situation in a very normal manner. Bilingual education relates to approaches in the classroom that use the native languages of English language learners for instruction. It's a concept that involves teaching academic content in two languages, in the native and secondary, with varying amounts of each language used in accordance. So, as I said, this is something I already said, that however, in an English and in a classroom where suppose English is being taught as a second language, so it happens, and there are cases, uh, there are researchers that have proved that teachers, they actually involve themselves in an act of spreading bilingual education. So there are there are possible advantages associated with that, and we need to normalize that situation. Now, the goals of bilingual education include teaching English to every student, fostering academic achievement, enabling English speakers to learn a second language, and developing national language resources. Let's come to the next linguistic situation, which is multilingualism. Now, multilingualism is an ability of an individual speaker community to communicate in three or more languages. So it's like there are plurality of languages. When plurality of languages, that whole idea is there and that whole concept is there. So there comes a situation of multilingualism, and India is the example. I come from India, and I can say that there are diversity of languages there. So that makes the nation multilingual. And this is in contrast with monolingualism, where a person can use only one language or speak one language. So this becomes an integral part of Indian society and culture, where people have the ability to speak more than one language. This is unique and layered, and there are multiple varieties of the same languages. So, interestingly, when there is a situation of multilingualism, so naturally, linguistic practices such as code mixing and code switching also arise. This impacts education, helps children develop superior reading and writing skills, and this also helps in a way, helps people to help people to this helps people to become analytical, and of course develop their social and academic skills than unilingual peers. So we can say there are a lot of benefits and advantages associated with this whole idea of multilingualism. So what are the advantages? So this gives access to multiple languages and multiple cultures. So if there's diversity, that also leads to one's development also. Of course, nation's development also. So there's a larger language sensitivity because there are so many people. Polyglots function better. And as I would like to say and reiterate the point that when there is this whole idea of multilingualism, so that's better for one's cognitive development also, because multilingualism leads to one's cognitive development. Learning a language at an early age makes it easier, boosts cognitive functions, and expands your mind and worldview. So, undoubtedly, there are so many advantages that multilingualism can lead to. Let's come to the focal point. Let's come to the main idea, that is translanguaging. So I'm going to talk about what translanguaging is, the situation of Indian classroom, the challenges that teachers face, because translanguaging leads to many challenges, and then the benefits, of course. Okay, and what are the future prospects? So, translanguaging is what? So, it is the act performed by bilinguals of assessing different linguistic features or various modes of what are described as autonomous languages in order to maximize communicative potential. So, this is an approach to bilingualism, and it is like a framework. It is the act of using more than one language. So, this goes beyond code switching, and of course it actually refers to the action of using different languages. So hybrid language use, this focuses on hybrid language use, and this is important for bilinguals in multilingual contexts. What I feel that translanguaging refers to the language practices of bilingual or multilingual individuals, and this includes simultaneous use of two or more languages, engaging everyone in conversation whether they are familiar with all the languages represented or not. So the practice emphasizes the participants' flexible use of the complex linguistic resources to make meaning of their lives and their complex communication. So this actually represents an approach to language pedagogy that affirms and leverages students' diverse and dynamic language practices in teaching and learning. So this is a practice which is, of course, being used or put into action in various classrooms, especially in the Indian scenario. I've read about it also because researches are still taking place, and it also draws our attention towards different challenges, because there are so many limitations or challenges that translanguaging actually leads to, which we will see further. Now, there are different categories of translanguaging also. So you can see there's something called impromptu translanguaging. So this impromptu, that means spontaneous. So what happens, this is a very spontaneous situation where the teacher switches between the native language and English in a natural conversational manner. And then there is something called planned translanguaging also. Now here the teacher makes conscious decisions, okay, about the learning outcomes, and he or she keeps the multilingual diversity of the students in mind. Now, the examples include using flashcards with words written in multiple languages, translating instructions between mother tongue and English, and providing resources such as stories in different languages from different cultures. So, there are two categories: one is natural, one is spontaneous, and the other is planned. Okay, and that can include various activities that the teachers can plan within the classroom scenario. Now, let's see some cases of translanguaging in the Indian context. So, there are studies that show that there is occasional use of other languages in English language classrooms. This is a study by Anderson and Lightfoot in 2021. So, we cannot deny the fact that there is no translanguaging that is taking place in the Indian classrooms. But yes, there are studies that are showing that there is occasional instance of other languages in English language classrooms, apart from English language. And minority of teachers reported actively facilitating translanguaging during language practice activities. Now, we are also language teachers, and at times it happens that students come from different backgrounds, and sometimes they are not able to understand English. So, in that scenario, in order to make them understand, we as teachers, we try to switch to other language, maybe in their mother tongues, so that they can easily understand. So, there's no denying the fact that we don't, indulge ourselves in translanguaging. We also make use of translanguaging within our teaching also methodology. So we should accept it as an important part of language pedagogy. Now, experienced teachers reported more L1 inclusive practices. Need to focus on use of other languages in English language teacher education in India. So, interestingly, I would also like to talk about the new education policy that in India we are looking forward to, and we have there's an implementation also. So there's a different, there's an entire change in the structure of the curriculum also. So it focuses a lot on this whole idea of multilingualism. So there's a lot of thrust to promote multilingualism, which is a very positive aspect. Now, benefits of translanguaging to students. So let us see what the sunny side is. So this promotes a deeper understanding of subject matter by discussing in one language and writing in another. So at times you are made to, discuss in one language, to speak about in one language, and write or express in a different language. Okay. So in a way, it promotes the deeper understanding of the subject matter. It also helps multilingual learners comprehend and communicate about subject area content. It empowers and promotes the growth of students' language development. So, of course, as I said, that this whole concept of, when we talk about the mother tongue, Okay, so this just promotes or adds to the growth of a student's language development, which is very true. And if a child is, or let's say if a student is learning in his or her mother tongue, so that naturally that is leading to one's cognitive development. So the language development takes place in a better manner. This, of course, motivates students to speak and partly help them overcome the psychological problems they face with their low linguistic abilities. So, in a way, what I feel that if you are exposed to more than one language, it is actually honing your linguistic abilities. It is making your linguistic abilities stronger in spite of just sticking to one language. Okay, so we sometimes we give a lot of thrust on just an individual language, but I think we need to accept the fact that now it has been proved that there's no concept of standard language. Okay, all the languages are they are fluid, and they are all acceptable. Okay, okay. So we cannot say that one particular language is standard and the other is not. So we need to accept the fact that all the languages are yeah, or they are all fluid. Now, this is of course a boon. So while this, as far as the ELT is concerned, okay, so I'll just try to relate this with translanguaging. So there's a lot of research going on in the area of translanguaging and ELT in India, and this is of course helpful in language teaching and learning. Especially, we have seen the Indian scenario where there's multilingualism, and how researchers show that how at the level of school there are teachers who are involving in the act of translanguaging. So this, of course, enhances language acquisition and promotes greater cognitive flexibility. So I'm reiterating my point again here. And this develops excellent language proficiency and confidence among learners of the language. So, in a way, you can just imagine that if there are students who have not much exposure to English, for example, and they are being taught in their mother tongue, so they can understand the concept in a better manner. And at the same time, when English is also being, taught to them, so it just becomes a situation of bilingualism. Okay, so where there's a simultaneous use of both the languages, so in a way that develops their language proficiency, and of course that leads to the boosting of their confidence also. So in a way, students, they improve their English language proficiency. So we should, as it is said that if we think positive, we think positively, so good things happen. Okay, so it's better that we should try to look at the sunny side, at the positive sides. But yes, of course, there are limitations, there are negative sides also attached to it. I should not say negatives, but yes, there are certain challenges that are accompanying translanguaging, and we need to fight those challenges, and we need to come up with solutions. So what are these challenges? Okay, so translanguaging in ELT in India, translanguaging in ELT in India is a big challenge. So there is, it just happens that sometimes the teachers, they don't have enough resources to teach. They don't know how to do translanguaging. So if we there is one situation where the teacher is switching to another language, and of course translanguaging is taking place, but then if we just accept it as a normal practice, so there might be some teachers who just cannot involve themselves in the act of translanguaging. So maybe because of various reasons, they are not trained, they don't have sufficient materials to teach. So then it becomes a challenge, and of course those challenges are being faced by the teachers, especially at the school level. So we need to train the teachers also. Teacher training is important. It becomes a necessity to train these teachers who lack training. Instructors to be imparted training in translanguaging. So even language instructors, so if they lack any kind of training in translanguaging, so if they are trained in that area, so it becomes easy for them to carry themselves in a very smooth manner. As far as the translanguaging is concerned, they can carry this whole act of translanguaging in a smooth manner. And of course there's a lack of instructional materials and tools, so we need to have plenty of instructional materials and tools that can help as secondary materials. Okay. So, yes, so these are some challenges that are being faced. Let me also give you a brief idea about the NEP 2020. So this NEP 2020 actually focuses on the power of multilingualism. So as I said that we need to abandon the concept of so-called standard language or pure language. There's nothing called pure language or standard language, because all languages are, they are systematic and they are fluid. So we need to come out of it. And the national education policy, that is 2020, so it's a comprehensive framework. It's a comprehensive framework that aims to transform the Indian educational system, recognizes the importance of multilingualism, and highlights the need to promote translanguaging as a pedagogical approach to enhance outcomes and bridge linguistic divides. So there's a lot of focus, even in NEP 2020, on translanguaging, and this envisages the promotion of Indian languages through regular use, preparation of pedagogical materials, training of teachers, adoption of mother tongues as medium of instruction, innovative methods, judicious use of technology, and development of positive attitude towards all languages and their remarkable unity. So, it has been popularly accepted that young children learn and grasp uh, concepts more quickly in their mother tongues or in their home languages. So NEP recommends that teachers use a bilingual approach to teaching students whose mother tongue may be different from the medium of instruction. So it is believed that multilingualism has great cognitive benefits to young students and children. And of course, there are challenges and potential advantages of linguistic diversity, which can impact the lives of Indian learners in educational instructions. So India is globally known for its colossal cultural and linguistic diversity, which plays a crucial role in shaping its democratic polity. And languages overlap and collide in a multilingual and multicultural society. So the need for translanguaging and code switching demonstrate complex practices. Okay, in in multilingual families, schools, and cities. So, of course, it is a fact that the promotion of Indian languages can only be made possible if they are used regularly for teaching and learning, and that is why NEP focuses a lot on on this whole idea of multilingual education. So this seeks to revamp the current schooling system by focusing on basic literacy and numeracy, encourages a multidisciplinary approach, integrating technology. This also emphasizes vocational education and critical thinking abilities, or significance differences in curriculum, pedagogy, and infrastructure. Several state and regional educational boards in India, there's this whole, this whole, significant differences as far as the curriculum, pedagogy, and infrastructure between several states and regional education boards in India is concerned. So, still, people are working to make schools more welcoming, skill focused, and comprehensive for all students. So, there are so many other things also apart from the things that I have mentioned related to this whole, let's say, presence of translanguaging within the NEP framework. But yes, other things are also associated with that. Now, certain few aspects to focus on. So, translanguaging can improve the text educational value. So not only it leads to one's cognitive development, but it can also improve the text educational value. So if we can have text in different languages, it can definitely improve the value of the matter. So again, the linguistic acts of code switching and code mixing, which are associated with translanguaging, can help students build links between the target language and their home language, leading to a deeper and more nuanced text comprehension. And as I have said that we cannot, if there are like plurality of, there are so many people and there's multiplicity of languages, so definitely it will lead to code switching and code mixing. But yes, there are obstacles that we need to overcome. We need to make a list of that. We need to come up with solutions. Then, further, teacher training and support are needed, especially in settings where monolingualism and standardization are prevailing. So, we need to train our teachers. And as I said, that we need sufficient instructional materials also. Many educators need more linguistic and cultural fluency to effectively employ these strategies in the classroom. So it just depends from classroom to classroom, and I think uh, it's the also the government and the policy makers together. They can work on this and come up with solutions to the different let's say different challenges that educators face. Now, translanguaging, for instance, may be seen as code switching and thus discouraged by certain educators rather than as a purposeful and dynamic use of many languages to assist learning. So, this can, sometimes people are not in favor of code switching, and translanguaging can be related to code switching, which actually. Which people might take it in a different manner, in a very negative manner, so they may not support it, so that varies. So so there are certain points which one can think about, like like as far as the improvement of students performance in school in India is concerned, or there are effects on language policy and instruction, or orientation to different cultures. Then bilingual and multilingual literature, I mean, this can also be this there should be prevalence of bilingual and multilingual literature that will add to the richness of one's culture, and also lead to diversity also add to the you know richness of linguistic resources, and to employ various language skills in class. So this is something which we can look forward to. We can look forward to through this linguistic act of translanguaging. So, in the end, I would just like to conclude my talk that as far as the trans languaging is concerned, now this is something which should be well suited in the Indian context where there are multiple languages. So, we just researchers have shown that teachers perceived multilingualism in varied ways. So majority of them, when we talk about multilingualism, so majority of them thought of multilingualism as encouraging the use of multiple languages in the classroom, and most of them welcomed the use of more than one language, okay, besides English in their classes. This is what studies have shown. So this builds an equitable and inclusive educational system. And since we all focus on the idea of inclusivity, so I think we can take translanguaging in a very positive manner, which leads to the maintenance, or let's say maintenance of course, an inclusive society. So this should be practiced within the Indian classrooms to some extent. At least to some extent, it should be there. And this places importance on both the native language and the new language, or let's say the other language. So it becomes an effective pedagogical practice in a variety of educational contexts. So since teachers or educators are involved in this whole process of translanguaging, so we need to take it in a very positive manner. As an educator, I also take it in a very positive manner. We know that the limitations are associated with that, but I think those can be tackled, and we should accept it as a very important framework or a very effective pedagogical practice, because you can just imagine the situation where students, they are being uh, they are being given some linguistic help as far as their understanding English in some mother tongue. So they may try to listen to a particular story. The teacher might be teaching the student a story, and might be using the English language which the student is failing to understand. Then the teacher translates it in his or her mother tongue, and it becomes easy for the student to understand. Okay, then later on the teacher can also teach the same thing in English. So I don't say that there should be prevalence of one language, but yes, if we involve ourselves in this whole idea of translanguaging, so we need to accept it as an effective pedagogical practice. Now, many teachers are not trained to employ translanguaging uh, in an effective manner. So yes, that's true that this is the last point I mentioned here. So that is true that they are not trained to employ translanguaging in an effective manner, and this becomes a serious challenge. So this is because there are so many people. So I think those challenges can be tackled at at the state level, at the different regional level, you can say, where teachers should be provided some sort of training. That's important, so that they can prepare themselves in a better manner. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation. I hope I could make sense, and it was very nice to talk about translanguaging, which becomes a very challenging concept in today's scenario. And I think there are a couple of questions which I would just like to answer. So yeah, question from Megan Jones. In India, how frequently will the teacher have a different native language than students, or that multiple students in one class speak languages different from each other, the language of instruction? Yeah. So as I said that, thank you, Megan, for the question. That's very interesting as a question. Now, how frequently will the teacher have a different native language than students? Okay. Or that multiple students in one class speak different language. So yeah, that just depends. Now every region has a particular regional language. Okay, so we know that there are so many languages, thousands of languages, and there are different language families. So if we just talk about let's say my region, the eastern region where I live, so mostly the students, they understand Hindi. Okay, so but yes, it just depends. It just depends. And that is what that is a challenging part of diversity. There are so many languages, so it just depends. So maybe I'll just give you one example. For example, in Kerala, so the mother tongue is Malayalam. Students understand Malayalam. So researchers have shown like many of the schools in Kerala. So if like they are being, if the students are being taught in English, they understand Malayalam. Okay, so if there's a class of 50 students, so majority of them will try to understand Malayalam. So the teacher also knows Malayalam. So in that case, the teacher, translates for the students in Malayalam language. So you can say that the majority of them understand Malayalam, but that just depends. Okay, however, there are certain schools where children might be understanding English, so that depends upon the students also, and there's a lot of variation. I cannot give you the exact data, but yes, some idea I have given you. So it just depends, because every region has a different dominant language, so that just depends upon the region. But yes, there's a lot of variation. So interestingly, I think we need to study a lot, collect a lot of statistics, and then we can have the exact, some amount, some kind of information I can present. But yes, that's true that every region has its own language, and students understand that language, so they can easily understand their mother tongues. All the students can understand their mother tongues, and it becomes easy for them also. But yes, students who have good background in English language, they can easily understand English. But those who come from, like, few of them come from sometimes different areas, so that they just don't understand, so that becomes a challenge for them. Okay, another question by Jonas. Would you agree or disagree that there are no monolingual people in the world because of dialects? When people only speak their own national language plus their home village dialect, etc. So see, I don't say, like, in the Indian context. Interestingly, I'll just talk about the language family. So there are different language families in India, and for example, the Indo-Aryan language, it's a very populated branch. There are so many languages belonging to this language family. But interestingly, there is another language family that is Great Andamanese. So that is a the languages that actually form a part of that language family. So their people, they live on the islands of Andamanese, and that's a monolingual culture. So they are actually living, the people, they lived in a monolingual culture. And there has been research also in that area. So I don't say that um, so there is this evidence that there have been monolingual people also, and because of those varieties, different varieties. Uh, so so we cannot say that that there are no monolingual people in the world. Of course there have been. And uh, it says when people only speak their own national language plus their home language, etc. So yes, I will just agree to the thing that there are instances of monolingual culture, and it's very difficult to extract data in a monolingual culture. If you need to talk to them, you have to somehow, it becomes a very challenge, being a monolingual. All right. Then another question: are there outside pressures against translanguaging, that is, administration, parents, community? Okay. So, as I said, that yes, there can be, of course, there can be pressures. So, at times it happens that, as I said, that some people, okay, some people are not, even as educators, they are not in favor of translanguaging, they are not in favor of code switching also. So we associate code switching and translanguaging together. So at high times it happens that the teachers are helping the students in their mother tongue, and when they come back and the parents, they come to know, so they are they want, there's a lot of thrust on English language. So there's always this, most of the times there is a parental pressure that, why you speak in your, in the other language, you're supposed to talk in English. So of course there can be pressures from other areas also. But yes, as I said, that as far as, like, for example, new education policy in our country is concerned, so there's a lot of focus on multilingualism, the power of multilingualism, and it naturally, it just makes us to believe that translanguaging is a very positive aspect, and we must include that within our pedagogy. Okay, Jonas has again okay, some question. I'm asking myself, for India, is there any person or are there a community of people who can speak every Indian language? So to say, the ultimate Indian citizen. So that's interesting. I think we need to, find out there. We need to find out, because it becomes a very difficult. It just depends upon your interest also, if you want to learn as many language. But yes, there are, I have seen, in a multilingual situation, I've seen children also picking up so many languages, and that depends upon the family also. But yes, it is difficult to learn these so many languages. But yes, it's easy to pick up few languages from around, and to make use of that language. But yes, of course, multilingualism should be taken positively, and it's a good exercise for one's cognitive development. Alex, what are the official languages of education, exams, diploma? Of course, mostly it is English. If someone has a diploma in one language, can he or she uses it to find a job in another language region? So, of course, when we talk about this whole, area of education, exams, diploma, English has given a lot of preference. But yes, um, when I'll just give you a practical example. So, people are learning English here, in India, for example. Now, when they land themselves in some kind of job, so if they are living in some kind of remote region, they know English very well. For example, just to get that job, they had a group discussion and a personal interview, which they cracked in English language. Now, what happens when they get a job? If they're posted in a remote area, in some village, okay, so there they have to use the local language. Sometimes they don't know the local language, so they start learning the local language just to converse with the people who are living over there, and it becomes easy for them. There's a smooth functioning. Okay, so it becomes, communication becomes easy for them, it becomes smooth for them if they know the local language. So um, so that becomes a practical scenario. So uh, uh, so I think that knowing a local language or knowing another language is something, we should take it in a very positive manner. So yes, of course, the thing is that you can take up any any interview or some exam in the English language here. And then, of course, there are sometimes there are provisions to write in the other language, Hindi also. But yes, you need to, it just depends upon your situation. I'll say. Okay, I think so. I think. Most of the questions, almost all the questions have been answered. Okay, so Sonia has already written that was the last question. So thank you so much for having me here. I hope that I could clear the concept or I could clear I could answer to your questions. And it was a pleasure to be a part of the program of the event. And I really thank the organizers for putting a lot of efforts in organizing this event so nicely and in such a systematic manner. Thank you so much.